Happy Monday, everyone. This is Martha with Nature Niche, and I'm here with my niece Mallory. And this is the Great Backyard Bird Count Hawaiian edition. So we're coming to you from the Big Island of Hawaii, and it is an awesome place for bird watching. The isolation of the archipelago makes it a really good birding spot. So it's the most remote inhabited island chain, and it makes it a seabird haven. The varied volcanic landscape ecosystems lead themselves to bird diversity, and there are at least 34 endemic island species that are endemic to the Hawaiian Islands. That means they're found nowhere else in the world. And most of the main islands kind of have their own suite of endemic species. So to see them all, you have to island hop. We didn't do that this trip. I just sort of dipped my toes in the waters of Hawaiian birding this trip. So it's teeming also with introduced species from Asia and South America, Africa, and Europe. And those tend to be mostly in the lowland areas, along with the endemic water birds, migrants, and wintering waders. So, per the American Birding Association's field guide, which is what we've been using to do our birding, the current bird list for the Hawaiian Islands numbers 338 species. Many are rare vagrants that are only recorded a handful of times. So the book covers 139 species that you're most likely to encounter, including all 34 of the remaining endemic species and their subspecies, all the native breeding birds, all the common migrants and winter visitors, and the more frequently reported vagrants and most of the introduced species. So I'll show you a little sampling of what we observed on our trip.
We'll start with introduced species that seem to be what we saw the most of, especially in the more urban areas around our condo in the Big Island. So these are species that breed in Hawaii after they were brought over by humans. And there were lots of reasons for that. Pest control, wanted more songbird diversity, wanted species familiar to them. So the first is the warbling white-eye, or Japanese white-eye. And this is a small little green-yellow songbird with a bright white eye ring that was introduced from Japan in the 1920s to 1930. And it really spread rapidly across the island. Unfortunately, this little bird is a carrier for avian malaria, which is a mosquito-borne illness and the greatest threat to the native forest songbirds of Hawaii. So mosquitoes were first brought over in like the water sources of European explorers, and this disease parasite spreads from introduced birds to the native bird population. And these native birds do not have any natural immunity to the disease. We also saw Java sparrows, which were introduced in the 1960s first to Oahu and then spread across the other main islands from Indonesia. And there in its homelands, it's actually become quite endangered, very low numbers because of the cage bird industry. They're known as rice birds, and they tend to feed on seeds in association with agriculture, so can be agricultural pests, and they spread weed seeds. We also saw some familiar faces from home. You'll recognize the house finch here, and they were introduced to the main Hawaiian Islands in the mid-1800s. And I guess have readily adapted to eating fruit and other seeds. The Hawaiian name for them translates to papaya eater. Also saw northern cardinal. This species was first introduced in 1929 as a cage bird that escaped on Oahu, and then it was later deliberately introduced And now you see it all over gardens and forests across all the main islands of Hawaii. We also saw yellow-billed cardinal, which is actually in the tanager family and was introduced to the Big Island of Hawaii from South America in the 1960s. And it has spread across the Big Island, and you often see this in urban centers and dry habitats. We also came across a bunch of common myna, and this species was introduced to the islands way back in 1865 to help control an infestation of armyworms in sugarcane plantations. But this species itself became a pretty bad agricultural pest. You'll see them everywhere. They're really loud and scolding, and it's considered one of the 100 most invasive species in the world. Unfortunately, it does prey on the eggs of the native Hawaiian birds. Our familiar mourning dove was introduced to the islands in the 1960s, as well as this larger spotted dove, which is originally from Southeast Asia, and it was again introduced in the 1860s, and this was for sport shooting, and now can be found on all of the main islands. And this is the much smaller zebra dove, also known as the barred dove, and it was introduced to Oahu in 1922, but has become ubiquitous across all the main Hawaiian islands. We saw plenty of them even at the Kona airport, and they have avian pox. They're susceptible to that, which deforms their feet. A number of other game bird species that have been introduced. This is Urkel's francolin, first introduced in 1957 from northeastern Africa, and it can be found across most of the islands in dry open areas and disturbed wet montane forest lowlands and golf courses. And this is a male and female Kalige pheasant, and this was introduced from Central Asia to Hawaiian Island in 1962 as game birds, and have been sighted on Oahu and Maui as well. But you'll see them in multi-bird social groups, again in dry, open to forested habitats. And like many of the other introduced game bird species, they help spread the seeds of invasive plants such as banana poka. So the game birds can be quite a problem from a vegetation management perspective. And moving on, I wanted to share some of the winter visitors and migrant species we observed. So winter visitors are birds that migrate to the Hawaiian Islands and spend their winters there. This Pacific golden plover is a prime example of that. And migrants, which are found in Hawaii only during migratory time, so spring and fall, and they move on to breed and winter elsewhere. So the Pacific golden plover, known as the Kolea in Hawaiian, which translates to someone who leaves, is a winter visitor, much like the humpback whale. So you'll see them arrive in early fall, and this is their winter plumage, but they'll change and leave in their breeding plumage by April, where they go to their breeding grounds in Alaska and Siberia. But thousands of these golden plovers navigate to the Hawaiian archipelago using the sun, the stars, and the Earth's magnetic field. And this species was followed by the Polynesian sailors to help them find Hawaii, knowing that the bird must be heading towards land. And you'll find them in the winter fattening up on lawns and golf courses. In its winter plumage, it's a slender bird with the beautiful, still with a gold cast to the speckled back and wings. It has a small head and a thin black bill that is shorter than many of the other shorebirds, and it has that distinct pale brown eyebrow. In its breeding plumage, the lower part of the head and the belly become pure black, and there's a pure white line running from the forehead down the neck to the breast. A very striking shorebird. I also had a nice time watching the wandering tattler, which is a slate gray winter visitor that you'll see along rocky shorelines on the main Hawaiian Islands. So this bird tends to arrive in mid-July and leave again by May, where they go to their breeding grounds in Alaska and Canadian streamside habitats. And along the shoreline, they tend to bob their tails and go in and out of the water's edge hunting for invertebrates. And according to Hawaiian folklore, the tattlers are sentinels, and they'll sound the alarm when there are intruders. And the Hawaiian name Ulili is meant to mimic the bird's call. So this shorebird has a slate gray back and head and chest, and it has a dark bill and a partial white eye stripe and eye ring, and darker dark gray lores, so that eye patch between the eye and the back of the bill. End with a couple of endemic species we saw. So these are species that are found only in the Hawaiian Islands area and nowhere else in the world. A prime example of that is the Hawaiian state bird, the Hawaiian goose, or nene, as it's more commonly referred to. And this is a medium-sized goose, one of Hawaii's greatest conservation success stories. I'll probably do a more detailed post about this species, but it is endemic, quite vulnerable, and federally protected as well. This species was originally listed as endangered under the Federal Endangered Species Act, but was downlisted to threatened in 2019. There were once more flightless geese species in Hawaii, but with the introduction of mammalian predators and humans, all of those species were wiped out and only the nene survived. The nene evolved from the Canada goose, but they are smaller with less webbing between their toes, and they have the buff striped neck and black forehead with a shorter bill than we're used to seeing. And the name nene refers to their querulous honks that you can hear them make, and sometimes they'll hiss when threatened as well. And last but certainly not least is the apapani, and this is one of the beautiful endemic honey creepers. It is a beautiful red color with a black wing and tail and white undertail and black curved thin bill. And this bird is largely found in ohia tree forests, mostly in elevations of an habitat over 3,000 feet on the Big Island, Kauai, and Maui. And it flits across the treetops looking for fresh ohia tree blooms, beautiful red flowers. And we saw it a lot singing on exposed dead tree branches as well. But they are vulnerable to the avian malaria. They get exposed to mosquitoes in lower altitude for us. But I had a lot of fun searching for honey creepers this trip as well. I hope you've enjoyed this Hawaiian addition to the Great Backyard Bird Count and enjoyed counting in your own habitats as well. Take care and have a good week.